Hello, Zinger Nation. This is Justin Roberti. How are you today? It's very good to see you all. I hope a lot of you are at NFT NYC. If that's where you're hoping to be today, we're going to have a great show. We're going to be talking to the CEO of the Stellar Network and Stellar Foundation, I should say, which is a global distributed payment system. So actually, I think that's very interesting to me because honestly, if you go back, if you have a few years in this crypto space and you're familiar with the ethos behind the original Bitcoin white paper, of course, and crypto overall, I would love to see more of that talk about distributed payments, about creating access for people who don't necessarily have reliable fiat local to them or a reliable online payment system that will go along with it. People spending hours of time in places like India and Africa to pay with hundreds of dollars to pay utility bills or to pay like yearly taxes, that sort of thing. Can create kind of really bad situations. So payment is one of the first things that crypto was meant to do. Of course, all this other stuff is built on top of the back of that, and so I think it's actually interesting to return to that and see where and see what we can talk about. So in the meantime, let me go ahead and bring out Denelle Dixon. Denelle, how are you today?
I'm awesome. I love that you call them the singers. That's awesome.
That I called them a Zinger Nation? Yeah. I said Zoomer Nation the other day, which actually that's my child. My child is a Zoomer. There is a Zoomer Nation out there, and they would be far more powerful than Zinger Nation taken as a whole. Just look at TikTok. But how about you right now, Denelle? Are you at new NFT NYC?
No, we have some folks there. I am not there. It seems like it's just a really great place to be, though, even with the weather and a lot of crazy stuff happening. But it's like I love to see it.
It seems like a great party. I mean, it's a party that would have like felt. I don't know. There's more of a party atmosphere in the NFT space a few months ago, of course. But it's good to see. They're always talking about community. It's good to see them get together. So tell me, I think that that Stellar's Foundation, and why don't you go ahead and tell me a little bit about how this got started? I understand that originally you were a fork on Ripple.
So originally, when Jed founded both, co-founded both Ripple and the Stellar Development Foundation. And originally it was a fork, I think, for about 8 months, and then they rewrote the entire code base. So they're very different code bases, very different consensus mechanisms at this point. The foundation is the sort of entity that shepherds the code base for the Stellar network. Right. We also work to really grow the Stellar ecosystem, and we think that our mission is about creating an equitable access to the global financial system. Right. We think the best way to do that is to use Stellar and, frankly, other blockchains out there to be able to get access to the unbanked and underbanked all over the world for these awesome services that you can get using blockchain.
Right. Well, here's the thing, though. I've seen so many projects that I either worked with directly or interviewed. Gemini comes to mind, for example, with their crypto-backed credit card. I've heard a lot of complaints that honestly, like, how decentralized have we really managed to become? How it's like we've cut out all of the horribleness of traditional finance and then created our own version and plugged it in instead. And I have to say that right now, the experience of trying to offboard crypto is not a great experience, on top of the fact the U.S. government will be taking 40% of that, thank you, as soon as you offload it. So how are we going to deal with this? I mean, we're trying to convince the powers, the people at large, people across the world, people who are not necessarily even heavily webby people right now, who might have be using a flip phone for access in emerging economies across Africa, in different parts of the world. How are we going to make this accessible to them using this network when, frankly, up till now, this is not an issue? I've talked to a bunch of projects that have handled this really suboptimally. like in a way that doesn't make it quick and doesn't make it cheap. And then that's been kind of the problem, because otherwise, payment and store of value, those should be the two things that fundamentally crypto does well, or certainly that's a Bitcoin thing. So, how are we going to get there? What's been holding us back?
A couple things. So first of all, the decentralization point, there's always going to be entities that are centralized. For example, if you think about exchanges, or if you think about financial institutions that are on the edges. But the point is that what we should have is a decentralized distributed network, so that we actually don't have a bunch of intermediaries that are between the user and the assets that they hold. So if you think about it from that standpoint, the net, like Stellar Network is very decentralized distributed network. But we do have these financial institutions that sit on the edges that solve the exact problem that you're talking about, and the problem that Jed and frankly others have set out to solve with respect to blockchain. Blockchain is awesome at solving cross-border payments and just payments generally. And that's one of the things that I said before to you, right before we got on, that it's not sexy. Payments have not been the sexy thing in blockchain, but frankly, it's the thing that we've been focused on forever. And the reason why we've stayed focused on it is because of the fact that it is the one thing that is going to bring blockchain to the masses. And if you think about what that means, is we have 1.7 billion unbanked, underbanked all over the globe. They don't have access because they've been de-risked, or because they don't have the money to put in the minimum balance requirements. They can't pay the fees. All of those things shouldn't mean that they don't have a space to be able to put their assets in a secure environment, hold those assets, send them to their family and friends, pay bills with them, all of those things. That's what you can do on Stellar. Now, the other thing that you got to was the on and off ramps. The irony is that here we are on blockchain, and we have these awesome tools that you can leverage. And we say we're all about the unbanked and the underbanked. And then you have to have a credit card or a bank account to be able to get a hold of the assets. So that was fundamentally our thing, is always trying to create what we've called an anchor network, which are these financial institutions that you can leverage cash through to be able to get them onto the network. And the most recent one that we launched just about, a couple weeks ago on Friday was with MoneyGram. And so that one is the perfect antidote to the problem, which was the cash, the ability to bring the cash economies into blockchain in a really simple way. So you can have wallets that are connected to Stellar, and very simply through an API with MoneyGram that MoneyGram has made available, working with us, you can then take your cash into a MoneyGram location and immediately convert it into your digital asset of USDC, and then do what you want with those assets, because your crypto, your wallet, your keys, and handle it yourself, and send it to your family, do what you want. And if you want to cash out, you do the same thing, and it's in local currency. So it's pretty awesome.
Right. So MoneyGram is a pretty, I'd be indicating it feels very 80s to me, because that's when I was growing up. But it's kind of like a previous economy way of making transfers. Their partnership with you would seem to make a lot of sense on both sides. Like, what is Stellar providing overall that increases access to the ability to pay? I mean, you're a layer one, projects are being built on you. What are you providing to projects? Why are they attracted to you?
Yeah. So first, I think it's the one thing that I love about it is because the one thing that I love about blockchain is that it can create that interoperability with the existing financial system. And if you said that, MoneyGram's like the 80s, I don't actually know when they were founded, but it's like one of the older financial institutions that we see. Sure. And to be able to integrate and interoperate with them is like getting access to lots of humans out there in the world who need this. So Stellar actually provides the network, right? The consensus mechanism, that layer one that wallets can build on to be able to leverage the protocol for the things that they want to do the utilities that they want to make available to their users. They can hold the assets, they can send the assets to other folks all over the world. They can send it to companies if they want to pay bills. It just depends on what utility the wallet is offering. So the wallet sits on top of Stellar. They're built based on local needs in region, which is what I love also, local builders solving local problems. So it's awesome. What MoneyGram then can do is just plug into those wallets with this API. So we've helped MoneyGram to develop this tool that translates the language from MoneyGram into Stellar language, and then vice versa, right? It goes backwards too. So it makes it all compatible and interoperable. And that is the beauty of the web. That is what financial institutions wanted, what we wanted to do with the financial side of the web. And it's happening, and it makes me so happy to see it, because I just want more and more interoperability with the existing financial infrastructure, more and more interoperability between and amongst chains. All of these things are going to create the value that blockchain can really deliver. And so that's what we're really focused on.
What has made this picture, like obviously in order for your distributed payment network, or a specialized network that is devoted to payments, and I'm all for it, because honestly, I've heard a lot of, people will brand their networks called, this is a security network, this is a privacy network, whatever, because everybody's trying to stand out or have a reason to have their particular particular network stand out. I can understand the idea of a payment network just about more than anything. That's like half of what we need crypto to be able to do fundamentally in order to be able to do anything, and everything else is that and store value, and we're pretty much good to go. But in this case, I can understand why there's a special payment network. But I ask you again. Why have so many other projects gotten this so wrong? As in, like, I literally see this has been like one of the main missions of like projects that I've been talking to since like 2016. And, the evidence of the need for a separate network development devoted to payment goes to show that this is apparently a bigger, is it that this is a more difficult picture on a global scale than projects are used to? What has been your exploration with this?
Yeah, I mean, the truth of the matter is this isn't easy. When you're actually like MoneyGram, it took them like 30 years to be able to build that infrastructure and that agent network that has 400,000 agents globally. And when you're really trying to connect with the cash-based economy, you need feet on the ground. You need local agents to be able to help solve that. So this has just been our focus all along. Look, I'll tell you that there's been a lot of FOMO internally for the last couple of years, given all the cool stuff that's happening. We are building smart contracts into the network. That's going to feed you liquidity into payments. That's going to happen later this year. We have an automated market maker in the network as well that folks can leverage from a wallet standpoint. You can have wallet interfaces there. There's also the DEX. And so those are leveraged for payments. All those things exist on the network, but they actually feed into the value of the payment network because they create that liquidity and making sure that the markets are going to be robust. But it's not easy. And it's also sometimes you do get a little bit of FOMO because there's so much other cool stuff that we can focus on. But we have spent the vast majority of our time really focused on building this payment network that we want everyone to be able to leverage. Having these financial institutions that are local on the edges was our first foray into it. We have 30 different stable coins that are issued on the network that are based on local currency that are one-to-one fiat backed. We think payments should be in stable coins. USDC Stellar is one of the big ones that lots of payments companies want to leverage, and wallet providers want to leverage. But I think that there's a couple reasons. I mean, I can't tell you what's in the ethos and thought patterns of other folks out there, but I'll tell you that when you're staying focused on this, this isn't the thing that gets a lot of attention, even though it should. It is the thing that is going to bring the masses to blockchain and crypto. It doesn't get a lot of attention because it's just like, I think it's table stakes. It's the thing that we need to have to be able to really solve the problems that we see in the world.
Sure. I mean, honestly, it's easy to take for granted what is possible for us. And then, I'm in a situation where I have a contractor in Russia, for example. This was a year ago. This was before the invasion of Ukraine, of course. But it took literally months to like work that out. I had to go to the bank and sit there and do this transfer. It was a whole extra rigmarole. And so that's even not looking particularly at the focus of some of these emerging economies where people like we take for granted the level of ease that we have here. I thought it was interesting that you made the point when we were talking earlier that you aren't necessarily looking for, even though Lumens is the native token, you aren't necessarily looking for all of these transactions to be it's facilitated through the use of Lumens, that you're actually just as happy for them to use other stable coins. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, I think that payments are, if a stable coin is really a stable coin and true to its name, it's going to have that one-to-one backing. It's going to get a lot of trust from the user. And because they know that the value isn't going to change between the time you send and then you receive the payment. That's really important. Asset issuance on Stellar takes literally a line of code. It's one of the things that we, asset issuance and payments are really what the network is about. the Lumen is an incredibly important part of what is in the network. The Lumen is the native currency, the native piece of cryptography that makes sure the transactions are safe and secure, and that also makes sure and protect us against spam and DDoS in terms of the network. It's a really important piece of the network. But, and people can choose to leverage lumens to be able to send value. There's a decentralized exchange, and that exchange can be leveraged to change into lots of different currencies. But in terms of what we look for, because this is what payment providers and what users who are sending value look for, is a stable asset that they can leverage to make sure that they send and receive the same thing. So that's we think stable coins are the best.
Right. And, from what we talked about earlier, you aren't terribly fazed by the troubles with stablecoins right now, because I'll personally, I'm just putting forward an opinion here, guys. This is never financial advice, but I would be worried not only for algorithmically backed stablecoins, but all of stablecoins have already begun to get a black eye, and I don't know how deep this will go. It's been really bad PR. So, but you seem confident in your position.
Yeah, well, I think that part of it is because I've spent the last 2 years really focused on working with regulators and policymakers all over the world, talking about the value of stablecoins and why, and the different procedures and mechanisms that they can put in play. Because really what we know is that what policymakers and regulators want is they want to make sure that the users who are receiving those assets are not going to encounter any challenge with respect to the fluctuation of the asset, or they're going to know, when you hear stablecoin, you think it's stable. So they're going to assume that it's stable and therefore leverageable. So what we've seen just in the last year and a half is a lot of focus by policymakers domestically and internationally on what is a stablecoin. And so there's lots of questions around whether algorithmic stablecoins really should have that kind of name, because they're not necessarily stable, they're pegged. But as we can see, what's happened recently, they can depeg, and then there's challenges associated with them. It doesn't mean they don't have value for some things, but I think for payments, folks are going to look for that one-to-one backing. So what we've seen domestically in the US and elsewhere is a lot of good attention on what does it mean to be a stablecoin if you're not a bank, and allowing those institutions that aren't banks to be able to participate in this, which is crucial from my standpoint, because you want to have competition, you want to have innovation. And there are a lot of institutions like Circle and Paxos and many others domestically, Gemini, that have issued assets that are stable assets that are one-to-one backed. And so they've spent time making sure that they've protected those assets for their users.
Okay. Well, I'm getting lots of questions from Devin here, so I'll go ahead and show this question from Devin. He's asking, what decentralized exchange do you recommend for XLM? I'm sure that you have DEXs built on your network, right? So what do we want to point people to?
Stellar Network has a built-in decentralized exchange. As I also mentioned, it also has an automated market maker that's built into the protocol level that launched last November. So there are lots of options with respect to, there are players out there that have built front ends for the automated market maker, and then you can use the decentralized exchange yourself.
All right. So of course, what you're working against being on the payment side, or being on the payment side of the crypto equation, in some ways, it's taking a stance toward treating it more like a currency, when most of the world is still interested in dealing with it as a commodity. This is how people are looking to make bets that 100 times their money, 1,000 times their money, and so forth. Everybody is drawn in by the allure of striking it rich. But what you really need, what the kind of currency you're looking to trade in really needs, is kind of a slow and steady growth, correct?
Well, what we think is best for the tools that are available on Stellar are the stable coins. But users can choose to use whatever. There's lots of assets that are on the network, and they can choose to use those. But from our standpoint, if you're going to make payments, and you see lots of wallets, Lobster's one of them they're talking about, and the questions there, they are they leverage a lot of different assets that you can leverage in them. But if they're going to use payments, a lot of times they want to focus on the assets that are stable. And so those assets tend to be, it's not just USDC, it could be, there's Nigerian Naira that folks can transact in. There's a Mexican peso. There's an Argentinian peso. There's lots of different assets that are out there. And I think that it just depends on the region that you're in and what you might want to be able to use it for. And I think that those assets are the strongest for payments.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean that's interesting. At this point, what has surprised you up to this point, like or over the past couple of years, about the way people are using this network? You have 6 million daily users, from what I understand. The daily is that 6 million daily
Yeah.
users?
Mhm.
And I'd asked you earlier when we came on. Where are most of? You said that they're coming from a number of different places, but where are all those users coming in from? I imagine this is a partner strategy with things like MoneyGrams, right?
Well, the great thing about a decentralized network like ours, in fact, like when Franklin Templeton built a money market fund on the network, we didn't actually hear about it until they filed their SEC report, and then we saw it, and we were really happy because that's a great thing that they chose our network. And of course, we work with them now. But the beautiful thing about a decentralized network is that folks can build on it all over the world, can create accounts on it, and that's what we're seeing. Like we don't know like who the users are. We actually at the foundation we don't have access to any of that kind of information, because
Mm-hmm.
that's actually sitting with custodial wallet providers or like the people are KYC'd when they come on and off the network. So I don't know where users are from, but we know that we have users globally because we can see that, all the different financial institutions on the edges and where they exist. So it's pretty awesome when you're looking at just the growth. I can't remember in terms of the payment volume itself, but we just did statistics for our, we do a quarterly call so that we can update users and update anyone who's interested on what's happening with the network. And we had an over 500% year-on-year growth with respect to payments volume. And that's awesome because that's what we want to
Mm-hmm.
see. There are a lot of other operations and transactions that happened on the network. There's obviously use of the exchange itself. There are a lot of things that go on, but we try to focus on those, again, that where relevant assets, which are those tied to financial instruments, are leveraged on the network, is sort of the thing
Mm-hmm.
that we focus on in terms of growth.
Right. That's interesting. And so this crypto winter that we've run into now has not hurt the rate of that usage.
The crypto winter.
Or
Oh,
winter that we're in now.
crypto winter, or is it just like an excessively long bear market that we're going to have to?
I don't know why we use the terms interchangeably, to tell you the
Yeah,
truth.
I
I
know.
do out of some sort of paroxysm of poeticism, I suppose. But I
No,
never understood why there were both. So in other words, are people looking for an easy way to off ramp? In which case, I can see why people might be using your services even more. Or does it not affect usage at all? Or are people holding harder because of they don't want to lose all the value of their
so
investment?
in terms, and I'll be honest with you that I haven't looked at the network statistics compared to like last quarter, which probably would give
Mm-hmm.
me more of an indication on that. We'll do that in a couple of weeks. But I'll tell you that I think that, what we're seeing in terms of the increase in payment volume demonstrates to us that if there's no, like that is a use case that is going to be continually leveraged and grow. And despite the bear market, the crypto winter, whatever we're calling this time, it's still happening. And it is like, there's still a lot of volume because it's actually something that people can do. What we're focused on delivering and what we want wallet partners who build on the network to be able to create in a
Right.
very localized fashion. This is what's also awesome about a global open source public network, is that you have folks all over the world building for their local problems. And so they're building utility and for people to do things locally that matter to them. And so I think we're going to see that increase. I think that this market is it hasn't done anything with respect to the Stellar network itself. I will tell you that I think that this market, what it will end up doing for in the long term, I will tell you what I hope, and then I'll tell you what I
Mm-hmm.
fear. I hope that this market actually allows us to continue to work like on those things that I do consider table stakes, like payments, on those things that having utility for people, things that people can do with their assets once they sit there, generate some yield, which I know is hard in this market, create more opportunities to pay their bills, all those things that users want to do. I hope that that's what shakes out at the end of this market. I fear a little bit that we'll end up with lots of consolidation at the above the layer one, and then we'll end up with a lot more centralization at the outside of layer one. Layer ones won't be centralized, but and I like the idea of not having. I like the idea of having lots of new players that come into the market and can compete with one another. So I'm hopeful that that's not the outcome, that we end up with centralized authorities larger and larger on the network. But again, if they are, it's fine because we're always going to promote that competition. We're always going to, we have an investment arm where we actually invest lots of values on the order of like $80 to $90 million a year in companies that are building on Stellar. And those companies are totally diverse in terms of the things that they're doing, infrastructure, wallets, like consumer oriented, business oriented, and we'll continue to focus on creating that diversity and that innovation.
Right. By the way, the foundation, are you functioning as a DAO now?
No, we're not. We actually are a foundation that we're a non-stock nonprofit entity. We are funded and we're funded at the outset of the creation of the Stellar network. And so there's no, we're not a charity. We're actually just a foundation. We pay taxes. We do all those things that everybody else does out there. We just don't have shareholders, which is a really, really important thing. I think if you're going to operate as a foundation in this, in crypto and blockchain, I think it's a really important thing to have, that we don't actually have anyone who can show us or tell us what they want us to do. We only focus on the mission, and all of our assets go into really creating that equitable access.
So everything, your liquidity pool, everything behind the foundation, this is all coming directly from users. You're not beholden to VC.
Oh, we actually don't get any money at all from users. We don't generate revenue at all from users of the network. There's no fees that actually come to Stellar. In fact, the fees are burned on the network. They're very small. The fees on the network, you can actually process 100,000 transactions for less than a penny on Stellar. So the network fees are low, but those get burned as soon as they are leveraged. No, the foundation was given assets at the very outset of the creation of the network. And those are the assets that the foundation leverages, not just to take care of the foundation and the needs of the foundation itself, but also to make sure that lots of these assets are given out to the ecosystem through marketing grants or through grants for access points. Or we have a whole webpage that's focused on all transparency. You can see as a daily ticker, if you choose to look at it all the time, which accounts are leveraged for what type of grants, and how what they're being used for. So we try to be as transparent as we can be, because I think from my background in the world of the web, back in the day when I was in Web 1, Web 2, the focus really was,
which is a great project.
That's fun.
I was a big fan.
And I think that having that background of like open source and transparency has made it so that I try to keep everything as transparent as I can, in terms of we sell lumens. The lumens were the assets that were provided to us at the outset of the creation of the foundation. We sell them on centralized exchanges. We make sure that folks understand that we do that. So we try really hard just to be as honest and transparent. But none of the revenue, all that revenue comes from, the revenue for the foundation comes from the sale of lumens. We try to keep it very small in terms of the amount that we sell. And we also then don't take in any other revenue from anywhere else.
Interesting. So, do you fear that the backlash of this current market is going to, you think that's going to make people less reliant or less trusting of crypto as an actual way to render payments? Because obviously, like as we were talking before, what makes something a good commodity, what makes something a good, or at least an exciting commodity, you don't want your actual currency to really be all that exciting. Sudden movements are not desirable.
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of challenges that have happened. I want to just say that I spent a ton of time in my earlier years in this on the content side of the web, and there's a lot of similarities and there are a lot of differences. But the similarity part is that we had like so much awesome creation and opportunity for innovation, and like trying to figure out like how people were going to monetize web content, what they were going to do on the web to create monetization opportunities. And all that sort of shakes out, right? In the end, the problem that happened on the content side is that shook out to like 5 players really controlling all of it, which is not what we want to happen here. Right. What we had there is we had a complete unwillingness to actually engage with regulators and policymakers at the time. We thought we like knew it all, and we were so smart that we didn't need them. In fact, that actually ended up not being true. What I really find interesting about what's happening right now is that even throughout this turmoil, because there has been a lot of things that have happened in the last several months about challenges with respect to specific tokens, or even like the DAO stuff that happened this weekend. All those things are going to create interest and concern from regulators and policymakers. The difference that we have here is that we're engaging with them, and we have been. I came on to be the CEO and executive director here at SDF in May 2019. And at the very outset, I met with and spent time with regulators and policymakers domestically and outside the US to make sure that they understood who we were and what we cared about. This is how we do it. Like, this is how, and like lots of folks are engaging on a regulatory front. not seeking necessarily regulation, but seeking education, which is what we didn't do when we were in the early days of the web. I'm hopeful that what will happen at sort of the end of this is when we see like the cycle, and I'm not even just likening it to the bear market. I'm just saying like at the end of like these policymakers having their concern, I hope that what we end up with is this really robust focus on standards and interoperability and making sure that chains think about like what we're actually set up to do. Because if we end up with just a few players who win on this side, it means we all lose because of the fact that what we need is payments to be distributed, and we need awesomeness to be on all these different chains so that we have a truly open financial structure that's connected to the traditional financial structure.
So you believe in an interoperable future?
Yep, I think it is. I think we're going to be able to get there. We just have to stay focused on it. It's super easy to not. Like one of the things that I saw happen is that we have this awesome internet that is based on all of these wonderful, amazing standards. And we stayed true to it, but just at the internet layer. When things were built on top of it, it was like these siloed walled gardens. That's what I worry about, making sure that we think all the time about creating interoperability. And sometimes it's going to be through centralized authorities like exchanges, but it also should be through bridges. And it also should be through bridges from smart contracts or just native chain. So these are things that we focus a lot on. We actually put bounty programs out there on. We just did a bridge bounty program where we put out $1 million over a period of time for each, I think it was 5 projects that actually ended up getting the bounty or participating in the bounty project, that they will bridge to other chains and make it so that create that interoperability. It is the most important thing, by the way. If we don't get this right, then we end up with the exact same financial model that we have today, which is an ability to exclude. It's an ability to make sure that there's lots of players can be de-risked. That's not what we want. So that's really important.
But traditional finance has been pouring so much money into crypto. I mean, we're already done, Denelle. I don't mean to.
No.
Take over, don't you think? Are we going to stop them? Justin's sure not going to stop them from taking over. I don't have any in the pockets.
We don't need to stop them from actually participating. We want them to participate. What we want, though, is multi-chain world. What we want is to have true standards and interoperability amongst all of it. It is truly like if we can actually keep it so that there's interoperability at that layer, centralized players can build on top. But if we try to make it so that only one centralized player has access to everything, that's going to screw the whole thing up.
You kind of said an interesting thing in passing about, it seemed like you were hoping that the struggles, there are headlines now. Like I promise you folks at home, for those of you who are considerably younger than me, 5 years ago, we would have not seen these headlines where they're talking about how will the crypto market bring down traditional finance. Crypto was considered, voodoo and a scam by 99% of everyone outside of, well, like 100% of everyone outside of the crypto sphere. But I can be completely honest, so you are hoping to attract their attention. You want more regulatory involvement, which would have been an unpopular position 5 years ago.
What I want is what I want in the early days of the web, the one thing that we actually saw was we saw regulatory restraint in that they didn't actually like regulate the internet. I don't know, you probably remember, maybe lots of listeners don't, but I remember like there was this concern that the governments were going to try to regulate the internet layer, which is that interoperability layer. We didn't have that, thank God. And we need to have that continued restraint now. What I do feel like from a regulatory, for us to pretend that the one thing that governments have been doing since the inception of governments is regulating value and trade and commodities and regulating the exchange of money, right? Whatever that money, whether it was gold or mushrooms or whatever the heck you want to call it, governments have been really good at regulating that. So for us to assume that they're not going to come in when there's an exchange of value or when there's an off-ramp and then you have actually value on the other side and not regulate it, that's crazy. So what we want is to make sure they're restrained from regulating the infrastructure layers so that we can continue to build this awesome thing. And we also want them to understand that the activity that is happening is what they need to focus on. And they shouldn't be focused on the fact that it's just new technology. The truth is the activity that's happening on these different networks and in these different really cool things that are happening on in blockchain generally are already things that they probably regulate. And we don't need to create a bunch of new laws and regulations around that. So we just want them to be restrained and thoughtful about how they're doing it. And so what that means is we need to educate and constantly show them the value, the use cases, what's happening, what can happen. Prove to them that they will be missing out on huge things if they try to regulate it out of existence.
Is it just that, how have we not matured as an industry into more lobbying power? Because what you're talking about when we talk about education, we're talking about lobbying. I know that there's a DAO out there, at least one that I can think of, that's trying to do that, trying to put together kind of a pack, I suppose. Isn't that kind of a logical next step in terms of how to approach that?
Yeah, we actually have many in the US, and we have actually several in Europe. And then we have organizations that are kind of coming up in other parts of the world. So we're going to see more and more attention put there. And I think that we already have, like, one of the things that we learned with the infrastructure bill in the US last year is that we actually do have a really strong lobby, and we have a really strong opinion that they can come through. So I think it's not, rather than be fearful or rather than trying to push the regulators away, it's opening the tent and saying, look, there's nothing to fear here, and here's why. And I think that we're going to see more folks get into that space and do more of that.
Cool. Okay. So somebody commented that you're doing some sort of Twitter takeover tonight at 5 p.m. Do you want to tell us about that?
I actually don't know. I saw that too, and I was like, that's super cool.
Like, out there. I'm going to have to wait. Where is it? There we go. Jerome, any Stellar fans out there, check out the Stellar Takeover Twitter space. I have no idea.
We have like a super robust community. I think Jerome is actually in that community, and I think that they're probably doing some of that. Like, I actually don't know, but it's pretty cool that that's the one thing about being an open, distributed, amazing platform, is that there are players out there that really care about what's happening on the network, and they like try to pull it together and make things happen.
All right, this is apparently Jerome's own Twitter spaces that he's doing as part of your community. It's fine, man. It's cool, Jerome. That's all right. I thought I would call it out as it sounded cool. If people want to find out more about your project, see more about what you're doing, where should they go?
Yeah, they should go to stellar.org. There's so much great information there. If they want to know about the mandate, which is what I mentioned in terms of the different assets that we hold and what we do with them, that's at mandate.stellar.org. So I think it's, one of the things that I love about my work and what I get to do is I get to represent this awesome project that we have, but I also really get to think about these issues about standards and interoperability and all the things for the good of the whole ecosystem. And so that's what we're going to continue to do and continue to fight for. But continue, look at us, look at what we're doing with MoneyGram. Go use a wallet, go use the on and off ramps. It's amazing. I used it myself, and I was like super proud of what we were able to pull together there. It's awesome, and it's only going to get bigger and better.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come and talk with us today. Love to have you on again. I'm interested in this project. This is I like where your focus is, and if a project like this maintains a vigorous business, and your network is continuing to run transactions with people actually using crypto as currency in a macro sense, that will show me something. That will show that that's a story I want to see, because it will indicate good things for the industry. Because, I mean, honestly, guys, as much as, everyone gets all hyped on the gambling aspect of investing in tons of altcoins and so forth, obviously, we're looking for that global use case, and payments is one of the baseline use cases that we absolutely need to be able to work out and give access to a number of other people. Thank you so much, Denelle. It has been great having you on.
Loved it. Thank you so much. Payments brings. Bye, everyone.
All right. Thanks, guys. So that was cool. We just ran a little bit over because honestly, I think it's a great project. I liked hearing about it a little bit. So go ahead and check them out. They are also, at stellar.org at stellar.org, not .org, at stellar.org on Twitter, since I do a lot of my own business on there and so forth. But everyone, take care of yourself. Go ahead and read up more on Stellar. That's kind of cool. And NYC, NFT NYC. I don't know if you're. I was going to go this week. I had some other things to do, but maybe given all that we've heard about the market right now, maybe it's just as well. I had an interview with Jordan Belfort yesterday that I'm going to publish this Friday in my column. He was calling it regulatory arbitrage. He really thinks that like lack of clarity and regulation has contributed a lot toward this winter, as we do dramatically like to say. Dan, I think it was Dan who said that. He's right about that. And crypto winter is a little dramatic. But at the same time, when you're writing like a 2,500 word article and you get sick of saying like downturn or bear market, sometimes it's good to have the other metaphors. Anyway, all, thank you so much for joining us today. Please go ahead and like and subscribe and all that jazz. Feel free to track me down on Twitter and tell me what projects you want me to have on, because frankly, I'm always game. I actually haven't been booking out that far for exactly that reason, so that we can be flexible. You know, the market is obviously kind of a hot focus right now. So like next week, I'm looking to maybe have Crypto Wendio come on and talk to us. We had Scott Melkor on Monday, although that was kind of crazy. We had no audio and had to switch to Twitter Spaces. So that was interesting. And I have a conversation with Tim Draper coming up. I just don't know if I'm going to be able to do it live on the show, which is what I'd really prefer to do. But anyway, love y'all. Take care of each other. Take care of yourselves. Look occasionally at something, you know, besides the markets, right? Like take the time to watch a little bit of, you know, I was going to say Cartoon Network, but I don't even know anymore. I don't even watch, like I've been watching Stranger Things. I wore the same Stranger Things show 2 shows in a row, which I didn't mean to do. I accidentally cycled it back on. But anyway, season 4, it's awesome. Thanks everyone. And I will talk to you soon. Talk to you later, guys. Bye. Let me go ahead and hit, yeah, there we go.